Hello, I'm Guy, and this is Guy Robot. Well, it's been a while since I did a video. Things have been a little crazy, but I want to do something a bit better for this one than I've done for a couple of the unboxing ones recently. So I thought I'd spend some time and do a tutorial how to software development. I've recently bought a monitor that's going over there, which is going to monitor all of my CCTV. And rather than just using some off-the-shelf software, I thought I'd create something end-to-end and do a little tutorial on how to create your own CCTV monitoring software if you've got some CCTV cameras in your house. This should run on anything on Windows and will monitor pretty much any camera that's got a video stream. So, first I've done a coding tutorial. Hope you enjoy this. Let's check it out. So this CCTV application I've already actually created. I did it for my own purposes, and I thought it would be good to kind of talk through how I did that, to give some people a bit of a run through in basic coding, and maybe because this might be useful to some people. I'm going to assume that anybody watching this tutorial has a basic understanding of coding. So I'm not going to be doing this from completely the ground up, but I'm going to explain some principles as I go along to hopefully give you some understanding. There's a few things to mention on this as well. So the first one is that I've already tried a few forms of this, and this isn't the most beautiful or elegant way I could solve this problem, but it's a quick and easy way. The second is that I'm not going to be doing this in the best way that you would do if I was trying to do this as a commercial project. This was meant to be a quick and easy solution for me to be able to see 4 different CCTV cameras in my own home, just for fun, rather than downloading something else. So I'm going to be doing this development in C#, which is a Microsoft managed memory language. So C#, trying to be clever, like C++ is C but a bit better, or C# is like a musical note, so it's better than just C. Ta-da, that's the reasoning behind it. It's very similar to Java in the way that the memory is managed. You don't have to manage memory allocation yourself, and actually a lot of syntax is there somewhere between Java and C++. It's my favourite programming language that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with it a lot over the years. I've been using it since 2004, roughly. I've used many languages in that time, but C# is still always my favourite in terms of language structure and functionality that's available, particularly some of the stuff in the .NET framework. And for user interface, you've got 2 options in the Windows world. The first one is to use WinForms, which are the really horrible traditional style Windows applications that you see, or WPF, which came in with Windows Vista in 2007, which is the more modern approach, although sadly still not used by everybody. I'm going to be using WPF today. Now, WPF is, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest way to do user interface designs and for applications that any platform has ever come up with. It's just wonderful to work on. And one of the reasons I'm going to use it for this is actually it's incredibly quick to get something that looks all right out of it. It's really easy to make UI changes. And it comes with a whole bunch of handy layout managers for grids, so that you can say, I want a 2x2 filling whatever size the screen is and stretch everything to fit. Brilliant, you haven't got to deal with it yourself. Okay, so the things I won't do with WPF are things called view models, which are how to keep your code nice and tidy and have your logic separated away from your user interface. I could do that, however, there is going to be some weird complexities we get into where there isn't nice segregation because of some dirty hacks that are going on in there, and this is going to be quick and easy, so I'm not going to bother clearing that up in a lovely, nice way. Additionally, styles where you can apply a theme, a bit like CSS to an application, I'm not going to do that because pretty much we're only about 4 labels, and I'm just going to apply it directly with some copy-paste because it's going to be quick. So let's get started. So here you are, you can see on the screen now the CCTV application running. Now, this at the moment has 2 cameras that are working successfully, and I have 2 cameras that are offline. That allows me to show you what happens if there's something that goes wrong and to be able to show errors. So it tries to open them and it retries things. I can click on a camera, bang, it goes to full screen. I can click it again, it goes back. I can do that with either of the working cameras, and I can't click on the broken cameras. Really simple app, lets me see all of my CCTV. I can sit here, I can monitor it. It resizes itself, an error occurs, it tells me an error has occurred, and it will retry it again in a minute. That's all I kind of really want for a CCTV application. And I can't resize it, I can't do anything else with it. The click you can do is me trying to move it around on the window. The whole point of this is it's meant to be just simple and stuck on one monitor, and that's how it's going to work. So, if you want to do any development in WPF, you're going to need Visual Studio. There is a community version available for free. I've got the professional one because I've spent lots and lots of money on it over the years, and I've got an MSDN subscription. But to be honest, if you're not working in a professional context, the community edition is phenomenal. Visual Studio is the best IDE in the entire universe. Anyone who disagrees with me clearly hasn't used Visual Studio long enough. Used a lot over the years, and this makes things a lot easier. So let's crank up Visual Studio and get started. The first thing we want to do when we're in here is create a new WPF project. So we do that by going File, New Project. Then we choose the type of application we want. We want a WPF application. And we are, for now, going to be absolutely hideous and just store this on my desktop. And we are going to call it CCTV Video Demo. You can do all kinds of other things here, so you can change your directory structuring so that it's tidy if you've got multiple projects in a solution. You can add it to source control automatically, which can be out the box, Git or TFS. And there's lots of different project types. We just want a WPF application, and we're going to give it a name, leave everything unchecked, and then just hit go. Or OK. Project gets created, and then out the box you can see a very unexciting window. So we are then just going to hit start on this. As you'll see, we have a little window that does nothing. This little black box here is some debugging stuff, so you can play with user interface elements and have a look at what's happening while it's running. You can minimize that if you run the application without debugging, which you can do by pressing Control and F5 together. Then you see you don't have that little black bit at the top. Now this is quite a long way from what we actually want, but that just gives you an idea of what the user interface looks like. Now in WPF you can see down here actually there's some XML that defines how our user interface looks. And it's really easy to change. If we want to set the background of a window to be red, we just type into the window tab, background equals red. Ta-da! We've now got a red window. We run that, we've got this beautiful red window. If I want to now put, I don't know, some text in there, we can go text block, text equals hello world. We can say we want it horizontally aligned in the center and vertically aligned in the center. We can say font size equals 32, and we can run that. And that's as easy as getting a hello world application to go. If we want to be really fancy, we could change the grid, which is our main container at the moment, to a view box, which is something that automatically scales content inside of it. And then as we resize the application, the text automatically grows. And you can do all kinds of things like adding margins. So we could say it's got a 20 pixel margin and all of the size. Bang, there you are again. That works as we grow. So that's WPF. All of the layout is defined with XML. You can use a toolbox to drag and drop stuff and move it around. I've never done that in all the time. I prefer handcrafting it. I guess you could do that. I actually find it better doing it this way. So let's delete all this out and let's start on our CCTV application. So back to where we started. Now, first thing I'm going to do is you get out the box this thing called a main window. Now, most people will keep something called main window within their application. I don't like having it called main window because what is the main window? Well, that's always an interesting question. It changes over time. I like to give everything a nice name. So we're going to click on this and you can either right click and do rename or you can hit F2 and I'm going to call this video stream window. Now the video stream window is going to be the one that shows the video streams. Why am I going to have more than one window, you might ask? I'll get to that in a second. So we rename the file video stream window. Then in here, you'll notice it hasn't actually renamed the class for it as well. So if we either, you can expand the XAML file on the right hand side and see a CS file, or you can just whack F7 on it to go into the code. Then you see the code that backs your user interface. You're going to click where it says main window, hit F2 for rename, and we are going to call this video stream window to correspond with the file name that we've got. Then the last thing we're going to do is go to app.xaml. We're going to change their startup URI from mainwindow.xaml to videostreamwindow.xaml. Now you don't have to do that, but so many people never get around to renaming a window. Some people probably don't even know how to because a lot of tutorials don't explain it. There you are. That's how you rename a window so that your main window for the application, so you don't have to worry about it. You can also actually replace the app.xaml programmatically and have an app.cs that instantiates the object. A lot of control and customization you can do. You can have extra error handling and stuff there. Again, we're not going to worry about that today, and a lot of people never pay any attention to that. Anyway, so we have an empty application. We've renamed our window thing. Now the next thing we need to do is get our video components. So what I should now say is how I'm going to do this project. The video components I'm going to use are from VLC. So there were a few ways to do this. The CCTV cameras I've got actually only provide their feeds through an RTSP stream, which is one of the only streaming formats that's a real pain to get stuff to integrate with. VLC, works flawlessly with it, and on Linux there's like FFmpeg and a few other things that can use it. But on Windows, not much out of the box really works with it, which made me try and figure out how I want to do this. I did find a library that could directly take RTSP streams, so I could use it in .NET. But it was a pain having to manage drop frames to keep up with it, because on a CCTV one, I'm quite happy to lose frames rather than try and keep the video feed smooth, which we were trying to do. And it had a few other problems, so I've been that. Then I was considering actually, do I want to take VLC, run a bunch of VLC windows, remove their borders, and embed them in another application? Quite easy to do on Windows. You just say to a window, you send it a message, hey, your parent is now this way, and it puts it into it. Kind of like when you got... if you think of a classic Windows application, Program Manager, Windows 3, and you've got other windows in it. Yeah, exactly like that. So I could have embedded that. But then there's more of the UI control, and I can't control stop as easily, and it gets into the whole telnet interface, which is a mess. So I found a wrapper, a libVLC, which is a programmer's interface for VLC, that works in .NET. I've had a few. This was the best one I found. It has issues, which we'll get to later. But fundamentally, I'm going to use VLC for doing this. So the first thing we need to do is tell this that we want to use the VLC libraries. So on the right-hand side here, we've got something called references. That is a list of all the different bits of code, other than our own, or the different big chunks of code, like system is a massive chunk of code of the core bits of the C# in Microsoft.NET development framework, and presentation core and presentation framework help with WPF. So what we're going to do now is right-click on references and do manage NuGet packages. Now you can add a reference one of two ways, either to a file you've got locally or to a big repository on the old interwebs. And we're going to use the big old interwebs repository. We're going to click on browse, type in the name of the package we want. So if we search for VLC.net, you'll see there's a whole bunch of them. The one we want is VLC.net.forms. Yes, there's one called WPF. There were a couple of weird quirks with it. It is just a wrapper for the forms one, and we're going to need to do a wrapper anyway of some stuff we're doing. So, going to use the forms one. You'll see on the right hand side, this has dependencies on core and interops. Then we're just going to hit install. What that will do is it will connect, it will download the packages locally. It means whenever they're updated, I can update all of the packages in one fell swoop. Nice and easy. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is, although this might seem like a weird thing, if we want to jump into code, I'm going to set up the configuration file to start with. The reason I'm going to set up the configuration file to start with is because then I can put the passwords in without them being on camera, rather than forgetting to do that later on. So we have a config file in all applications by default. You can create your own, you can make them really complex, you can use the registry, whatever you want, but a really easy way for just sticking in some values to configure, you've got a file called app.config. Double click it, you'll notice a theme. It's some XML. So there are a whole bunch of sections within this. You can control all kinds of things, proxies, whatever your system uses. As far as we're concerned, we just want to have a way to stick some values in that we're going to use. So we're going to use a few settings in this. So there's a section called app settings, which is an out-the-box configuration section. We add that in there, and then we are going to add in 6 different values. So the first one, we're going to put something called add key equals quotes, value equals quotes. And we're going to have 6 of these. The key is the name of our setting, and the value is the value of our setting. So we're going to have VLC folder, and we're going to set VLC folder to be equal to where VLC is installed on our system, or more accurately, where libVLC is installed on our system. That's because our code needs to know this in order to run. Then we're also going to add another one, which we're going to call CCTV feed 1. And that's going to have a value equal to, whoopsie daisy, missing quote on there, goes nice and red to tell me I've done something wrong. And then all I'm going to do here is put in the URL to my video feed. Now, because this is VLC, this will actually support any of VLC supported streaming feeds. It could be HTTP, it could be 264, Web 1, whatever you want, whatever your camera does. If VLC supports it, stick it in there, nice and easy. In fact, you could use this to watch 4 movies simultaneously and just put a local file, decode or backslash my awesome pirated movie. We're going to copy paste this 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to change those to be CCTV feed 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then finally, we're going to add one more setting, which is which monitor do we want to display it on. Now, Windows shows them as 1, 2, and 3 on my 3-monitor system. We see it encoded as 0, 1, 2. So I want 0, which is my bottom left monitor. So, all of that done, I'm going to whack save. Thing to note here is user and secret are the super secret username and password for my feed. I should probably also change these IP addresses, so 42, 43, and 44. We've got 4 different streams. Now, this is where I'm going to close the file, but I'm going to jump cut and put my super secret password in. Okay, so with that done, we've got all of our setup done. So it's time to actually start writing some code. Or more accurately, first of all, we're going to do some user interface. So I'm going to open the video stream window that we created. Now, at the moment, it doesn't really have a lot in there. And what we want to do is set up the basics on here. So we're going to give the window a title to start with. At the moment, it's called main window. We're going to call it CCTV monitor. And that is the title, as you can see there, which updates in the title bar. When we've got that set, we're going to do a few other settings as well. So we're going to give it a Windows style. And as I type, you see it auto-completes. And this gives us the border type we want on the window. Now, this is going to be full screen and borderless, so we choose none as our border. You'll notice instantly that's updated on there. And then we're going to change resize mode to be can resize. Now, this is the default. I'm just putting it in there for clarity. Now, you might think I don't want to resize it. There's reason for my madness. In a minute, we're going to write code that chooses which window it goes on to, makes it full screen. If you don't have can resize and you put it that it's no resize, then the code itself won't be allowed to resize it. So very important we get that set right. Once we've done that, we've got the default height and width, which fundamentally is just how it's going to stay on screen, because we're going to change that in code in a minute. And once we've done that, we really just need to set the background of the window to black, because I want my CCTV application to be black, and we're going to set Windows state to be normal. Again, that might sound a little bit weird because it should be maximized, but I will explain why we do that in code. We're doing it this way. And then we need to also have a way to integrate with WinForms in WPF, because the libVLC code, frustratingly, although I understand why, is written in WinForms. So if we right-click on references and click add reference this time, rather than manage NuGet packages, we're going to add a reference to some Microsoft code. And here on the left, you see assemblies. Framework is all of the Microsoft-related stuff we can link to. And if we scroll down to the bottom, you'll see Windows Forms integration, which is what we want to integrate with Windows Forms. We tick that, press OK. Not a lot seems to happen. But what it means now is we can put Windows Forms on our window that we're creating. So the first thing we want to do is have this 2x2 grid, so we can have 4 different CCTVs. So there is a control called grid. It's got a great name. And we are going to make the grid a 2x2 by saying grids row definitions. So this defines how many rows there are in our grid. So we want 2, and we say row definition height is equal to star. Now you can do 3 things for a height. You can have star, auto, or a number. A number is the pixel height you want, although very important with WPF, it's device independent pixels, so DPI doesn't matter. You know those weird issues you get with DPI in Windows? Yeah, if everyone used this, it wouldn't be an issue. We can do it since 2007. Blame the developers. The other option is auto, which means depending on how much content there is, it will size the row to exactly that. And the other one is star. And star means divide up all the remaining space between all the stars. So if we have 2 rows and one of them is star and the other one is star, they each get 50% of the space. You can put, like this, 2 star. So if we had a row that was 2 star and a row that was star, then you will see from the blue line that's appeared on screen, one of the rows is a third and the other one is 2/3. We want 2 equally sized ones, we give them both a star, and we do the same with our column definitions, and we do a column definition this time with a width equal to a star, and we create 2 of those. Then we've got our 2x2 grid. The next thing we want to do is put in our Windows Form host. Now, Windows Form host lets us put our Windows Form control on here, which is going to be our VLC player in a minute. So to do that, we do Windows Form host, and we're going to say put this Windows Form host in the grid's first column, which is numbered 0, and in the first row and in the first column. Give it a margin of 5 pixels around it. Call it Forms host 1 because we're going to need to access it from code in a minute. And we should just be able to do that. The other thing I'm going to do, which I forgot to do, is say here that this window isn't focusable. That means you can't click on this window. And I'm going to copy paste this focusable and make it so that the grid's also not focusable and this window's form host isn't focusable. Now, why would I want to do that? So, you can see now, I'm not sure whether we'll be able to test this or not. Let's see. If I create a text block, text equals blah, foreground color is red, grid row is 0, grid column is 1, font size is 48. You'll see I've got my blah that's appeared here. Now, if I want to move this to be over on the first one, it works fine because there's no content there. And that's okay, that should work. If I run the application now, you'll see I have blah appearing in the top left. Now, that would be great for putting our labels over the video feed. The problem is, when you start using WinForms with the VLC video feed and it's updating, that blah will disappear. So we have to do some dirty hacks in a minute, which means this window is never going to be clickable. We're going to layer clever transparent stuff on top of it later. But because of that, we don't want everything to be clickable. If you don't want something to be clickable so that the user can't interact with it, the easiest way is just set focusable equals false. But I've called everything true. There we are. We want focusable equals false on everything. And we'll get rid of my blah label. We'll copy paste that 4 times, rename it 2, 3, 4. We will put 1 in that column, 1 in that column. We'll put those in those rows. Bang, there we are. We now have our finished XAML for the video stream window. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to tell this that when it loads, it needs to run some code. We're going to do loaded, which is an event, so you can take to run certain code that you've written when things happen. So there's a whole life cycle, and loaded is when it's finished doing all the stuff it needs to get ready, and it's going to ready to display. We're going to just press enter, so it creates us some code called window new loaded. Going to press, going to save that, go into our code behind, which we've opened from before, and we've got this window loaded method. I don't like calling it window underscore loaded, so I'm going to press F2 and just rename it to OnVlcLibDirectory. And for now, here is our code behind. Everything in dark grey is code we're not using at the moment, so stuff that shouldn't be there. We can press Control and full stop, and it will give a list of all the stuff that shouldn't be there. We can just say, yep, remove all that unnecessary stuff, bang, it's gone. A triple / comment is something that could be used for documentation later, so we can just put in there, this window will show us our CCTV video stream. And then the other code we've got here is a constructor. Now, a constructor is code that runs once when an object is first created. So in this case, when we create our video stream window, this code will run. Now, we can do something called breakpoints. That means when we're running our code for testing, it will pause the code when it gets there. So we just stick a breakpoint on there, and we press the start button. What will happen is it will start to load our window, and the very first thing our program will do, we pause on that breakpoint. We can then continue it, and it will display it. So what we're going to do is just put a comment in here. This one line of code that's in here already takes that XAML file we created and does magic to hook it up automatically to our code file. So it's a bit of behind the scenes magic, that, well, not really magic, it's automatic code that's written that wires up the XAML to our code, which means that all of the stuff that's in here has corresponding code that agrees with it. So there is a grid class, and on grid there is a static method called setRow and setColumn, which is what these are for. There's a grid, there's a row definition class, a column definition class, there's a Windows form host class, and on that there are properties for margin, name, and focusable. So all of this can be represented in code, so it's just a way to take the XML and put it into code. So all we're going to do is leave that where it is, put a comment that says put up XAML and initialize components, because I like writing comments. Now we're going to create a couple of variables as well in the class, and what we're going to do is create these to store our VLC controls that we've not created yet, so we've got somewhere to create them, and also the hosts for them, and this is going to allow us to map backwards and forwards between them later. Now normally you'd create everything in your XAML, however these VLC controls have issues if they're created in the XAML. If you create them in XAML, you need to tell it what the VLC path is at the time of creation, but then you haven't got that information available until you've looked in the app config, so it gets messy, and that's when you then get into trying to load of config first or view models, but it doesn't support that. So rather than faffing around doing it, I'm just going to create the VLC controls in code rather than having them elsewhere. So we are just going to create 2 private class level members, one for the Windows form host and one for the VLC control. You'll see red squiggly underlined because it doesn't know where these classes are. If I press Control and dot, it says you want to use Windows forms host integration. Pops this using statement at the top, which means it can then find that, and then I'm going to press Control dot to do VLC control. If we hadn't added the Windows form host to references and we hadn't added the VLC.net package in NuGet, then we wouldn't have been able to sort out those red squiggly underline issues. I'm going to put this in a section called declarations because I always like doing that. And I'm going to create just tidy that up a little bit as well. I'm quite a fan of comments. Once we've done that, all we need to do now in our constructor is actually store our 4 forms hosts that we've already created in XAML and stick them into our forms host array we've just done. So that is as simple as say in the forms host array that we've created here, the 0th index is forms host 1, the 1st index is form host 2, etc. The next thing I'm going to do is actually set up our VLC controls so we can watch some videos. So, I'm not going to put any video in it yet, but we're going to do the basics of it. So, create VLC controls for our 4 camera feeds, and all I'm going to do is have a little for loop from I equals 1, I greater than equals 4, I plus plus. It doesn't really matter whether we're doing 0 or 1 based here, because in a minute we're going to access the number 1 and the number 0, so we're going to have to plus 1 or minus 1, whatever we do. So the first thing to do is get a handle to the forms host to put this video feed in, because we're going to put our WinForms VLC inside a forms host, and we're going to go Windows form host, host is underscore forms host, which we've just had brackets I minus 1. If you're doing 0 base, that would just be I in that context. Then we're going to create our VLC control, our VLC folder config, and pop it in our array. And so we're going to create a new VLC control and stick that in our array. And here, when we create the VLC control, we just specify where the folder for VLC is. Again, a couple of red wiggly underlines. We can press Control dot directory info. Oh, it's looking for configuration manager. Now you'll see when we did that, it complained it couldn't figure out what to do with configuration manager. It couldn't find it. That's because we're missing a reference. We do again add reference. In here we search for system.configuration. Add that, bang, done. Then we can control dot that, and it will be using sysconfiguration, and we control dot the directory info using system.io. All the red squigglies are gone. We've created our VLC control, and then what we want to do is hook this up to events, which I'm gonna. So if we do, so as well as the window having events, the VLC control has an event like I've started playing, I've started buffering, etc., etc. So hook up to VLC control event, so we can do control dot encountered error plus equals. As we do plus equals, you'll see it comes to press tab to insert. Press tab, it tries to complete a name for me. Again, I don't like the name, so I'm going to call this on-screen error. Oops, typed that in wrong. Going to call it on-screen error. And then I'm going to do the same thing with 3 more errors. So as well as that, I'm going to have media change, playing, open, and stop. Okay, so I've just copied in some blank definitions from a file to save having to rename those and do all of them. And again, red squiggly underline, control dot, that fixes everything. So at this point, we've now created our control, we've stored it in an array, but we haven't actually yet put it in the forms host, which means it won't display. So the next step then is for us to just say that in our Windows Forms host, which we've got here, we want the child of that to be our VLC control, which is just host, or the name of it, .child equals the control we've just created. And bang, at that point, we should now have empty VLC windows. So if we now press run, not a lot. We haven't done anything with it yet. We just have, well, space for them. But the good news is that at this point, we've got the basics of it done, ready to accept some video. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is say that when the window has been loaded, we want to start playing some videos. So I'm going to go back to our onloaded method that we created with nothing in it earlier. I'm going to give it a comment. 3 slashes, it will fill out the template for you. And I'm going to put the summary of this method is handle the window being loaded and ready to load videos. The arguments for sender and E we are not actually going to use, but I'm going to put my standard comments I write every single time in there. The sender is which user interface control sent the event. Now, in the context of a window being loaded, it'll be the window itself. And E is event arguments, which depending on what the actual event is, depends on what you can do with it, not a lot, just out of the box. So, once we've got that, we now need to initialize our 4 VLC ones and connect to the video feeds. So, here we go. So, for in I equals 0, I is less than underscore VLC controls dot length I plus plus. So, our VLC controls had a length of 4, so we're going to count from 0 to less than 4, so 0, 1, 2, 3. And I plus plus increments its standard for loop in programming terms. So, we need to, first of all, we need to get VLC control its underscore VLC controls brackets I. That just gives us a handle to it in a shorter name than doing underscore VLC controls brackets I. Once we have done that, we need to figure out what the video feed we're displaying is. So if we go string feed equals, and then we can go configuration manager dot. And this is the other thing in Visual Studio, it's all autocomplete. So if I do config, this is configuration manager, I press enter, and I just press dot to autocomplete for me. And then we want the app settings that we did, so that's the top one. You can either start typing or double click it. And then we know that the name of that feed is CCTV feed, then a number 1 to 4. So if we do square brackets in quotes, CCTV feed, and we want to make that whatever the I is, so 0, 1, 2, 3, to become 1, 2, 3, 4. So I plus 1. So at that point, we've then got a URL in feed. We should do if the config value is there, but always good to check that the config is right. So then we're going to go if string.is null or empty feed. So that goes if the feed string we've just read from the config is either an empty string, so it's blank, or it's null, doesn't even exist, then continue. And that means I've just actually spotted a bug in my template code. And that means that we will, at that point, go to the next camera without doing any further configuration of this video feed. However, if the video feed is not null or empty, we've got a URL for it, we will hit the next line of code, and that's going to be control.setMedia new URI feed. Red squiggly, control.enter again, and that just tells the VLC control has a method called setMedia that the people who wrote the VLC library have got, and we tell it that its media is going to be that URL. The other thing we need to do, which I've missed out of here, is we need to go control.endInit. Now, you should never really have to do this, but the way the VLC library has been written is a bit buggy, and there's a bug whereby if your VLC control isn't initialized in XAML, then it doesn't actually ever initialize it, which means then there's another bug, which means you can't actually start playback. I had to go through their source code to figure that one out. So if you're going to do programmatically adding VLC controls, you need that line once in your program when you finished actually getting it loaded in the first place. Right, so once that's done, we are now loading the media, but what we're not doing is actually playing the media. So our next one is we need to start playing it. So we have a method onStream media changed. Now the media change is when we've told it to set the media, which we've just done. So now what we need to do is tell it to play. So as I said earlier, the sender will be the control to trigger the event. In this case, our control is the VLC control. So we can change sender from a generic object into a VLC control with a cast and then call the play method on it. And that should start playing. Now, if we press run the application now and wait. Oh, it works. Pleasant surprise. So at this point, you'll notice I've got a video feed. If I resize this window, it will, whoopsie daisy, resize these, I can't click on them, I can't do anything else. I can now have a demo, that issue I said about. So if I come down here and I go text block, grid.row is 0, grid.column is 0,
Font size is 128. Text equals I'm not always visible. And we are going to go grid.column span is 2, so it'll stretch the whole way across the thing. And we're going to go foreground on that is red. So we should, if everything's working in a normal world, just be able to show that label on top of the video feed. What you'll notice is the whole thing goes missing. Even the videos we're not playing, it's hidden behind. You can see a bit of red there, but that shouldn't happen. Now, if this wasn't a Windows Forms host, that wouldn't happen. If it wasn't that particular control, it wouldn't happen. So this is why we end up in a bit of a hack in a minute to get the text on top. But for now, as it stands, we've got some video streaming. We've got all of them working as we should. We know that 2 of the video feeds aren't working at the moment, so it just does nothing for them. And we're in a pretty good state to move on to the next one.
Well, I'm going to split this into 2 parts, so I hope you enjoyed part 1. If you did, please check out part 2 next time. And I'd love to know what you thought about this, whether I should do some more coding ones. Please leave some comments below, or contact me at GuyRobotTV at Facebook or Twitter, or check out my blog, http://GuyRobot.tv. Please hit subscribe if you enjoy the stuff on my channel, and let me know whether you like this, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.